There are only so many hours in the day. But what if you could make more?
Today is December 22nd. It's the summer solstice, the day of the year when the gap between sunrise and sunset is at its widest. And I'm going to try and make that gap just a little bit wider with the help of this here McLaren. How are we going to do that? Well, the concept is simple. We're going to start here in Sydney and drive basically straight west as far as possible. By working against the Earth's rotation, we should be able to extend the length of the day just a little bit longer.
But almost straight away we run into some complications. At the time we filmed this, virtually all of Australia's east coast was on fire, and our route through the Great Western Highway was at risk of being closed at any moment. And the further along the highway we went, the more obvious it became that we were heading towards potential danger. The air was getting thick with smoke, but I didn't want to admit defeat and raise the McLaren's roof. Luckily, I had come prepared.
Well, as you can see, things are a little bit dire right now in terms of atmospherics. I was hoping for a sunny day instead. Well, the bushfires are blocking out pretty much all of the sun as there's this brown haze from the smoke. It's pretty spooky, I'll be honest, driving through this area, but the road is clear for now. I hope it'll stay clear. This is kind of our only route out of Sydney. Nature doesn't really care for our plans, so we're kind of at her mercy. Let's see how we go. At least now I can breathe.
Mount Panorama, the mecca of Aussie motorsport and a place that McLaren is no stranger to. We're only passing through, but a quick spurt over the top of Mount Panorama only just began to scratch my itch for something other than boring motorway driving. The Mount Panorama circuit isn't really the right place for that when it's just a public road, so I had to go find something a little more appropriate.
All right, I know that we could make better time if I stuck to the main highway, but highways are boring and we are in a McLaren, which is the opposite of boring. So I think it's worth a little detour. We're going to take the back road between Bathurst and Orange, where it's a little bit windy, and see what this car can do.
Now, what this car can do is blow your socks off. Up until now, it's been a comfortable highway tourer, but just a twist of a dial turns it into an absolute monster.
So much fun.
Those twin turbos cram big boost into the engine, while the deep vents built into each door suck massive quantities of air through the radiators and intercoolers to keep temps in check and power and torque up.
Well, I'm glad I found a twisty road because this car was purpose-built for them. What a front end. It's got so much grip, so much braking power, and so much outright power, thanks to that 4-litre twin-turbo V8 behind me. It is an absolute beast of an engine. But I've had my fun now, and it's time to head back to the highway. There's heaps more kilometres to crunch, so let's get to it.
The city of Orange is about 260 kilometres from Sydney and a little over 120 kilometres from the section of the Blue Mountains that was on fire. Yet even this far out, we're still enveloped in dense smoke. We press on further west, and while the smoke starts to thin out, I soon find myself battling something else: the intense heat of inland Australia. The McLaren's a thirsty machine, so after I top up its tank, I go and find myself some protection from the sun's rays. While we weren't attempting to conquer anything in particular, the mere fact that this supercar seems so comfortable out here in the searing heat was pretty remarkable.
Well, we're somewhere, I'm not entirely sure, but the soil's getting redder and I am getting hotter. Yeah, the car is saying it's 44 degrees. It feels like more than that in the cabin. I had to stop and get this very fashionable hat and some servo sunnies. And I'm marinating myself in sunblock every 2 hours. just to sort of keep me from turning into a big piece of human jerky. But I tell you what, I'm actually fairly comfortable, all things considered, because this car rides exceptionally well. When you put it in comfort mode, this thing just irons out all the bumps. In fact, it rides better than some regular cars, let alone most other supercars. And that's quite an achievement. And in terms of an everyday, livable supercar, well, this is what one looks like.
The further west we went, the more the McLaren stood out. Out here, where almost everyone is in a diesel 4x4, a purple roofless supercar is definitely a fish out of water. And speaking of which, with 530 kilowatts of power and 770 newton meters of torque, the 720S Spider makes just as much grunt as a Ferrari F8 Tributo. And when you flatten the throttle and the turbos come on boost, you're in no doubt as to the McLaren's status as an absolute apex predator.
It's currently about 4:20. Got a few more hours ahead of us. Sundown, by my reckoning, should be about a little bit past 8, depending on where we end up. Speaking of which, we've got a lot more time on the road before we get there, so there's nothing left to do but to knuckle down and just keep driving.
Last year, my colleague Andy Enright took the 720S Coupe on a nighttime blat down the Great Ocean Road, and this time I'm doing the polar opposite in that car's roofless twin. Eventually, we run out of daylight around 8:30 in the evening, on a road somewhere past the dusty mining town of Cobar. How much extra daylight did we actually gain after 14 hours of driving and all of those litres of fuel? A measly half an hour. And it could have been more had we not been delayed by the bushfires and detours to winding roads, but think of it this way, that's still an extra half an hour behind the wheel of one of the best supercars on the market, and one that allows you to drop the roof and fully appreciate the grandeur of the great Australian outback. It's been brilliant, both the road trip and the car itself, but as the sun sets in the red dirt in front of me, I'm left with one final thought. Now I've got to get home.